The first light of dawn creeps over the rooftops of the insulae, casting long shadows across the narrow, winding streets. Footsteps echo softly on the uneven stone, a mix of hurried merchants and weary laborers beginning their day. You can almost hear the distant murmur of fountains in the piazzas, water spilling over worn marble edges, mingling with the faint clang of blacksmiths hammering iron in shaded alleys. If you enjoy wandering these forgotten corners of history with me, remember to support RomeChronicle. Among the most unusual sights is the youngest workforce of the city. Children, no older than 10, carrying small containers of urine, collected from households desperate to rid themselves of waste. In Rome, urine was a valuable commodity. Fullers, the laundries of the city, used it to clean and whiten togas and tunics. The ammonia within acted as a natural bleaching agent, a method so effective that even the wealthiest patricians' garments relied on this pungent elixir. Children, often from poor families, dashed through the streets, their leather sandals slapping against the stone, shouting for buyers. Some were careful to avoid the cartwheels and the occasional drunken passerby, while others ran recklessly, spurred by the few coins promised at the end of their deliveries. You might pause to notice the smell, harsh, sour, unmistakable, but for Romans it was the smell of business. Fullers standing in tubs of water, stomping and scrubbing cloth with their feet, would inspect a urine's quality, sometimes sniffing it with the same intensity a modern chemist might reserve for fine wine. Their hands, wrinkled and reddened from years of caustic contact, moved with precise rhythm. This work was hard, smelly, and exhausting, yet it supported the city's pride in white togas and finely dyed fabrics. Occasionally a mischievous child would spill their load, sending a ripple of curses and laughter through the narrow lane. Beyond the laundries, life buzzed with an intensity both mundane and harsh. Bakers kneaded dough, the scent of rising bread drifting through open windows. Shoemakers hammered leather sandals, the rhythmic tapping competing with the chatter of apartment dwellers leaning over balconies to catch news of distant markets or gossip from neighbors. The poor lived packed together, rooms stacked upon rooms in wooden and brick frames, sharing air thick with smoke from cooking fires and the occasional furnace used to heat baths. Even the wealthier domus, with their mosaics and painted walls, echoed faintly with servant footsteps and the occasional squawk of a rooster. Children running errands, particularly with urine, were part of this living organism of the city, blending necessity with enterprise. The fullers' courtyards often became a cacophony of smells and sounds, clattering tubs, shouting assistants, and the occasional slap of water over stone. Yet for all its strangeness, there was an economy to it, a rhythm of exchange and survival. A coin changed hands, a load of urine was received, and the child dashed off again, already planning which corner of the insulae would yield the next small fortune. The practice, odd to us today, was not shameful but practical, a lesson in Roman resourcefulness and the peculiar market that sustained this ancient metropolis. As the morning unfolds, the streets grow louder. Cartwheels scrape over cobblestones, and the chatter of apartment dwellers carries from open windows. The children weaving between them, urine-filled jars in hand, navigate a delicate choreography. A misstep could mean a shattered container and a cascade of coins lost to splintered ceramic or worse. A scolding from a fuller's assistant whose patience wears as thin as the tunics being scrubbed. The children often think in terms of routes and shortcuts, memorizing every alley and shadow, every nook where a fuller's courtyard might welcome a delivery. RomeChronicle reminds us that this was business, education, and survival all in one. The fullers themselves work with surprising precision. Their long wooden tubs are lined with linen and wool, ready to be pressed and stomped, feet bare, and toughened by years of immersion in water. Urine and fuller's earth, a type of clay that helped lift dirt and oil. The children watch carefully, knowing that some fullers would inspect the jars before paying, sniffing, and tilting the contents to gauge freshness. One spilled drop, and the murky liquid could ruin a batch of togas meant for a senator. Yet there is a rhythm to this chaos, a surprising harmony between the young couriers and the craftsmen whose livelihoods depend on such unorthodox materials. The fullers curse gently when a jar wobbles, sometimes adding a teasing grin or an admonishment about running too fast. Meanwhile, the urban symphony continues, the clang of hammers from nearby workshops, the squawk of poultry being herded for sale, and the faint thrum of chatter from the market. Some children pause at a fountain, cupping water to rinse their hands or take a brief drink, savoring the cool relief before plunging back into the traffic of merchants and neighbors. In insulae above, mothers hang laundry from wooden poles, unaware of the irony that urine collected below will one day whiten their fabrics more efficiently than soap ever could. The air is thick with odors: fresh bread, roasting meats, wet stone, and the sharp tang of ammonia. Romans, accustomed to it, navigate without hesitation. The smell is familiar as the sunrise itself. The streets themselves are lessons in Roman life. Narrow, uneven, and often littered with debris, they demand attention. A child might slip on a wet patch left by a fountain, or dodge a mule cart carrying amphorae of wine. Every interaction between fullers, street vendors, neighbors, and these small entrepreneurs forms a network of survival. Even light humor threads through the day. A child tipping a jar too far, causing a harmless splash, or an older fuller pretending to scold them while secretly impressed by their agility. Life here is harsh, but it is also communal, a mesh of observation, negotiation, and quick thinking. By mid-morning, the city's pulse intensifies. The wealthier districts boast marble and frescoed walls, but the streets are no less alive with noise and commerce. Children, urine jars in tow, adapt constantly, learning which lanes offer smooth passage and which hold hazards like street-cleaning dogs or merchants' barrels. For many, this work is their introduction to currency, trade, and the unspoken rules of public life. The fullers' courtyards are microcosms of the city itself. Labor, economy, humor, and vigilance combined. If you imagine walking these alleys, you might feel the tension of balance and the thrill of a small success as coins jingle in a young hand, a reward for navigating the bustling chaos. By late morning, the rhythm of the city has settled into a predictable chaos. Children continue darting through streets and alleys, urine jars balanced carefully, their small hands gripping wooden handles or clay rims. It is easy to forget from a modern perspective that such labor was not merely tolerated, it was woven into the economy. RomeChronicle reminds us that for many families, each child's small earnings were essential. The coins they earned could buy bread, a bit of oil for cooking, or perhaps a scrap of wool for a tunic patch. Poverty dictated the terms of survival, and these streets were as much a classroom as they were a marketplace. The fuller's yards provide another lesson in discipline and technique. Stomping on cloth with bare, calloused feet, they manipulate ammonia-rich water and fuller's earth to remove stains, grease, and color impurities. Apprentices sometimes assist, fetching water, stirring vats, or adjusting fabric tension. From the perspective of a child courier, the courtyards are a world apart, a place of precise movement, pungent smells, and the satisfying sound of fabric yielding to the scrub and stomp of the fuller's skilled feet. Occasionally, a passerby might pause, intrigued or repelled by the unusual spectacle, their sandals squelching softly on wet stone as they peer through the open gate. Families of these children often lived stacked in insulae above the street, small rooms crowded with relatives, pets, and the tools of domestic life. Mothers might hang laundry to dry, fathers return from construction or market errands, and older siblings tend to younger ones. Noise travels easily. The clatter of dishes, the calls of neighbors, and the distant hum of forum discussions rise in a layered chorus. The family unit functioned as both support and economy. A child's earnings and urine deliveries contributed to household sustenance, feeding everyone below and above. Even the youngest children, barely able to lift a jar, learned the value of movement, timing, and observation skills essential for survival in Rome's bustling urban landscape. Meanwhile, the city continues its ambient performance. Blacksmiths hammer iron with a rhythmic clang, faint and echoing, while water from fountains trickles like soft percussion. Street vendors hawk their wares: olive oil, garum, small loaves of bread, and the smell of roasted meats drifts from cook shops, blending with the pungent tang of the laundry's working fluids. Laughter punctuates the day. A child narrowly avoiding a cart, a fuller's apprentice dropping a piece of cloth, or a neighbor calling down a teasing remark. Humor, light and unpretentious, tempers the harshness, reminding those in these streets that even in laborious routines, life can sparkle with small, shared joys. Economic lessons extend beyond coins and chores. Urine collection exemplifies Roman ingenuity, turning a waste product into a commodity critical for textile care. Children learned the chain of production, from collection to delivery to the final cleaning. They became aware, almost instinctively, of the city's hierarchy: senators and merchants demanding spotless garments, middle-class artisans navigating supply chains, and the poor finding niches to survive. Every spill, misstep, or successfully delivered jar reinforced practical knowledge, timing, agility, observation, and negotiation. Walking these streets mentally, one can almost feel the tension of balance, the weight of the jars, the scent of ammonia, and the subtle pride of mastering an odd but indispensable craft in the heart of Rome. As the afternoon wanes, the streets of Rome begin to shift in rhythm. Sunlight slants through narrow alleys, warming stone walls, and casting long shadows across the uneven pavement. The children who carried jars of urine since dawn now move with careful fatigue, muscles aching, but minds alert. Coins clink softly in their pouches, a tangible reward for a day of balance, speed, and observation. The fullers continue their labor, though their pace slows slightly, feet still stomping, hands scrubbing, eyes scanning for imperfections. Even in exhaustion, there is precision, honed over years of practice, a testament to the professionalism and pride in work that defines Roman craftsmanship. Inside the insulae, families prepare for evening. Meals are modest. Porridge, bread, olives, perhaps a small portion of fish or meat, depending on the day's earnings. The air smells of cooking fires mingled with the lingering tang of ammonia from below. Children gather to wash their hands, sometimes with water from nearby fountains, the gentle gurgle forming a soft backdrop to chatter and domestic routines. Lessons are improvised. Older siblings help younger ones, not with scrolls and stylus, but with practical knowledge how to navigate crowded streets, how to approach a fuller's courtyard without dropping a jar, how to recognize coins and trade efficiently. Education is earned in the rhythm of daily survival. Meanwhile, the city itself winds down unevenly. Markets close, leaving faint aromas of stale bread and crushed herbs. Blacksmiths hammer less frequently, their echoes fading to a sporadic tap. Distant fountains murmur over worn marble edges, and street chatter softens, replaced by occasional laughter or the bark of a dog. The courtyards of fullers become quieter, water stilling in tubs, fabric pressed and folded, awaiting the next day. For the children, the journey home is a reverse of morning's route. Lighter jars replaced by fatigue, yet minds alert to the hazards of carts, stray animals, and the occasional boisterous passerby. RomeChronicle invites you to imagine their small triumphs and minor calamities, a day's work concluded in both relief and accomplishment. What strikes the modern observer is how practical necessity shaped unusual professions. Collecting urine, a task seemingly bizarre, was vital for the maintenance of the city's identity, its whitened togas, and the reputation of its fullers. Children, often underestimated, were essential cogs in this economic engine, learning responsibility, agility, and awareness long before adulthood. They observed social hierarchies intimately, navigating the interface between domestic life, street commerce, and artisan craft. Humor and resilience intertwined with duty, creating a human narrative as rich as any seen in the marble halls of patrician homes. As night falls, oil lamps flicker in windows and courtyards, casting golden light across the streets. Families gather, stories are shared, and children rest their weary limbs, jars emptied, coins counted, lessons absorbed. The city exhales, settling into a quiet rhythm, only to awaken once again with dawn. And in these cycles, one recognizes the extraordinary within the ordinary, the ingenuity of the Romans, the labor of the young, and the peculiar yet essential practices that kept society functioning. Every drop of urine delivered, every step across stone streets, every splash and misstep forms part of a living, breathing organism. A city whose story survives in the echoes of its daily life, captured and preserved by RomeChronicle.